What's up, CHFFL? I am struggling with my voice. I've been drinking tea all morning following that Georgia-Tennessee game yesterday, which was just glorious. Go Dogs. Stetson Bennett should be in the Heisman talk. I think right now he should be the favorite, but I am biased. We are live for week 9 of the CHFFL play. After week 8 was very high flying, higher scoring than we have been seeing, starting to get back to the mean. We were due for some regression in the upward direction. The MAGA conference, really a mess. Buys and injuries are piling up for people, particularly my team facing an uphill battle this week with Grant. And there's a buying market, what I'm calling a cold war right now. Marty has said that he is looking maybe about selling Adams and Diggs, but he's still in it. The problem is that everybody statistically is still in it, even if they feel like they're not a super team. So those prices are going to keep going higher. We have one trade to review. This is another non-pick trade. We've had a lot of non-pick trades happening. It's been really exciting with the trade market this year. We have Minney and Marty trading Tyler Boyd for Amari Cooper. Now, Amari Cooper has better value. He's been a very good value since Minney drafted him. Startable all the time. Wide receiver 2, solid. But Tyler Boyd has a near-term boom potential while Minney is chasing this playoff spot in the MAGA conference. And he also has a bye week dodge. The Browns are on bye this week, and Minney thinks he has a chance for another big upset this week against Swan after taking out Banis and being the team of the week last week. So I like this trade. This is a very smart, good managerial trade, a utility trade, moving guys around for when you need them. Hope it works out for both teams as they keep everything really interesting. Let's look at our waiver report for week 8. Not the most exciting. Dawson Knox for $15 to Minney has some good value. I've been talking about it a lot this year, but you'd like any tight end, any piece of that Buffalo offense that you can get. Knox, he blocks a lot. He's a good all-around tight end, so not a huge high-volume guy, but that's always there as a possibility. Minney also got Mecole Hardman for $12. Go Dawgs. And Parker with Joshua Palmer for $5. Pretty quiet week. Some smaller after waiver pickups that not that meaningful. Forgot to take a couple of slides out there. It happens. There really weren't much other than me picking up and dropping various running backs and them all being hurt immediately after I picked them up, just like all of the rest of my team. Wanted to look at the standings before we get into predictions for this week. We're going to spend a little more time in predictions, as I didn't have a ton to talk about at the front end of things, except that everything is just interesting. Mark now has a firm 6-2 record, a lead in the MAGA conference. Additionally, has the tiebreaker against Derek and myself, so he is in a very solid place. High probability making the playoffs. Derek and I at 5-3, tied with Bill, and we have another tough matchup this week. Bill getting, call it a somewhat lucky win last week against Parker. The schedule sometimes just favors you, that you're down when you're playing somebody else who isn't that great. Stan, though, still very much in it at 4-4, and so are Max and Minney. Minney with 2 upsets in a row. He had one of the most difficult interleague schedules in the entire league, but he's managed to stay alive here. He's at 3-5, looking for a clean sweep of interleague play. Was he 0-5? I'm pretty sure going into it. But either way, his team is looking good. Kamara, really explosive. I did see this morning that the video of Kamara's assault in Las Vegas has been released. I don't know if that will lead to a faster suspension this year. The NFL tends to not care if you brutally beat somebody near death as long as there's no video of it to make them look bad. Now there is a video. I haven't gotten to watch it yet. Over in the Smut Hut Conference, still got Swan, team to beat. Dropped a couple of games, but he's okay with that. He's leading the way. Grant has put together a couple of wins in a row at 5-3, and probably didn't have it this way when he was looking at his schedule to start the year, but he has an easy matchup against my pipe burst this week. Banis at 4-4. arguably the best team on paper in the whole league. I got unlucky last week. He played the team of the week. It happens. You can put up 145 and still lose, but he's in there in the playoff spot right now. Wes and Marty are both one game under him and still have a chance. Do they? And this is where that arms race is. Marty's thinking about selling one game out of the playoffs. Wes, his team just on paper doesn't look like it quite stacks up unless he goes and gets somebody. But when you have everybody is still in the hunt, there aren't a lot of sellers, drives up the price. That's gonna be really interesting over these next few weeks as we push towards the trade deadline. All right. Getting into predictions, week 8, I went 4-2 again. I've pretty much gone 4-2 every week this season, largely 35-13 now. Minney, our surprise team of the week, and we are entering the final week of Interleague. So let me switch over to our two browser look as we can go into this week's games. And I'm just going to tear the Band-Aid off. My Atlanta Pipe Burst versus Grant's team. I don't know. I'm barely fielding a complete roster of players who actually start in the NFL. I look forward to the game with Grant every year. We kind of have a long rivalry going, but this year it seems like it's a long shot. It's a long shot. Thursday, Jalen Hurts gets 20.02 points for Grant, and Jake Elliott subbing in for the fantastic Robbie Gould only gets 3. What I'm to come to expect. The big story here are my buys and injuries. Jonathan Taylor, out. Keenan Allen, after the bye week, is apparently more hurt than he was before the bye week, out. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt on bye. Tavius Murray, who's been a good sub-in on bye. Greg Dulcich, who's been good enough to actually flex if I had to, was on bye. Brandon Cooks was out Thursday with some personal reason. It's just all these things keep happening this week. And so I am starting guys like Justice Hill and James Cook. I'm not going to drop my prospects, my long shots, my long-term keeper stashes, hope just to put somebody who's projected for a couple of extra points into this roster. I need Josh Allen and Kelsey to combine for 70 points. That's the prayer. The prayer is that right there. Grant on the other side, he is without McCaffrey. And that's when I was eyeing this up a few weeks ago. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have Chubb and Hunt, but he's not going to have McCaffrey. We're still mostly going to be full strength, and that just has not happened. Otherwise, Grant has everyone. He has Hill, ARSB. Darren Waller looks like he should play this week. Metcalf has been looking fine. Good value there from the draft. James Conner back healthy. I see no reason not to take Grant here. Let's just move on to another potentially one-sided affair, but also maybe not, because Parker keeps putting on strong teams, and right now Parker is just starting all the guys subbing in for my players. But Mark, Lady G's Beard at 6-2, playing Parker's Schindler's Fist at 1-7. Parker acquiring a whole lot of draft picks, and I know I have to get on setting the draft board for next year. I will do that. Hopefully today I'll have some time so that we have all of that straightened out. We've had a lot of picks now. But anyway, Mark on Thursday had Miles Sanders and Devonta Smith go. They combined for 21.5. A little underwhelming there. Definitely we're hoping to get more from those two. And Parker coming in with a full roster. Isaiah Pacheco, I would just love for him to hit one day. Apparently Parker has him in over A.J. Dillon, who's just been disappointing. Parker missing one, Dale Robinson on bye. Not a huge problem for him. He has Joshua Palmer with Keenan Allen out. Should be getting some volume. He has Deion Jackson with Jonathan Taylor out. Should be getting some volume. And Chris Godwin's first game starting for Parker makes this a lot closer than I would have thought when someone told me Mark is playing Parker this week. Look at Fantasy Pros, has Parker down at a 79. And Mark, Fantasy Pros likes Mark a lot more than ESPN this week. Of course, he had a couple down Thursday games, up at a 92. I also think Mark gets this, even though Parker's going to make it interesting. If Swift, yeah, so whenever Swift has that questionable tag, sometimes he just doesn't get involved very much, and that's always a threat to happen. Tyler Lockett could have a disappear game any time. I see a pathway for Parker to win this, but I'm still predicting Mark gets the win. All right, moving on here. Oh no, this is going to be our game of the week. Will be Swan against Minney. But let's go over to Max. Super MAGA, it's not a joke. 3-5, facing the also 3-5 Pokeballs and Pussycats. That is Wes. Now, Max coming in here, and he's a little bit banged up. Parker thinks he's going to upset Mark. He's calling it this week. I think that is very possible. We'll see what happens. It's a week where Mark could drop a game. That would be really helpful for me, Parker, if you could go ahead and do that. And we're back to Max's team. If Deebo Samuel on the bye, George Kittle on the bye. I mean, they play on the same team. He hasn't substituted Kittle out yet. I imagine, will he start likely, or will he have to go get another tight end from free agency? Either way, Max not at full strength for this. Donta Foreman. Okay, see, I like Donta Foreman. I had him last year. I just don't think he's going to keep scoring 30 points a game. I think that's been a fluke for a couple weeks in a row. He's had boom weeks. I think he's more of a 10 to 12 point a game guy, but a good solid flex for Max. His running backs very strong with Jacobs and Mostert ahead of him there. Isaiah McKenzie, Curtis Samuel, the receivers are lacking with Deebo on the bye. But Max's team looks fairly strong overall, projected 111 without a tight end on ESPN. Wes, on the other side, Mahomes, Stevenson, still great. Not much to talk about except for TJ Hawkinson now on the Vikings. First game after the trade, I saw a headline that Hawkinson's going to be very involved and get a lot of work this first week. We'll see if that's the case, but I feel like no matter what, he's going to be utilized better than he was in Detroit. That's a big boost for Wes, in my opinion. Talked about it a lot on the Two Tight Ends podcast this week, which was great with Wes as the guest. If you haven't gotten a chance to listen to it, definitely go ahead. The Steelers are all on a bye for Wes, so no Najee, no Pickens, no Warren. That puts him at a little bit of a disadvantage. Fantasy Pros has Wes at an 86, Max at an 85. Really close game for two teams that both need a win. They're in the same situation, just on the outside, looking in at the playoffs. I prefer Wes here. I think Wes takes this. I like the tight end advantage. I feel like there's going to be some magic from Hawkinson's first game, and I think there's some upside. He matches Max's upside with Stevenson and Carter. Gabe Davis, of course, could always go off. I'd rather have Davis than Isaiah McKenzie, although go Dawgs. Next, let's move over to Space Jam 2, Bannis and Jason versus Bill, McConnellsville Mutineers. Bannis had Damian Pierce and A.J. Brown go on Thursday, combining for 33.8. Solid games from both of them. Bannis just looks like his floor is so high. I know I've been saying this every week, how good this team looks. I'm just envious. I mean, I started with the top prediction, the top projection level ever recorded in league history, and I really just like his team. Over on Bill's side, got 9 points from the Eagles defense. Very solid there. Bannis, not missing. Oh, he's missing Saquon, and Mark Andrews is doubtful, so he's not going to be in there. Bill's, again, getting somebody at a bit of a down week. But Bannis has a lot of good depth. He still has Joe Mixon starting, and Juju went out and traded to get that extra depth piece. Here's where you have the depth to sub in a good flex with Barkley on a bye. Obviously, Juju is no Barkley, but solid. Over on the other side, Bill starting Justin Fields this week. I feel like that's just risky, but Bill has had a lot of struggles getting a quarterback that he feels comfortable with. Austin Eckler off the bye. Great news for Bill. Brian Robinson out there again. Chris Olave having a great rookie season. Everything looks fine for Bill's team. It is an uphill battle here, though. And Fantasy Pros has Bill ranked pretty high. Fantasy Pros has Bill at a 90 and Bannis down at an 89. Am I misreading something here? ESPN likes Bannis more. Normally I would go with Fantasy Pros, but here I'm going ESPN. I just think Bannis' team. That's it. I'm going Bannis. This should be another close one. We have a couple really good matchups this week. Bill 5-3, despite not being the highest scoring team there is. How long can he keep up that luck? He faces a giant this week after Parker last week. I think that Bannis is going to roll here, but it is interesting that Bannis could realistically be 4-5 after this week. Oh, that would make things interesting. See chat talking about if Parker were to upset Mark and Bill were to upset Bannis, that makes both conferences really interesting all of a sudden. I mean, they already are, but it throws a whole bunch of fuel on the fire. Next, moving over to Marty's Throat Thrusters versus Stan's Grabber by the Pelosi. Marty 3-5, Stan 4-4. Hoping that Bannis can knock Bill down one. Looking at Marty's team, he did not sell either Diggs or Adams this week, which I think is the right call. You're only one game back from the playoffs. Stick in there and see what you can get. Stan's a tough matchup, but he's winnable. I mean, Marty was pretty close last week. He was about 8 points behind Mark. Could have gotten a win there. His team is still capable of doing it. We got Taysom Hill in there at tight end going for the high upside. Khalil Herbert, I think, is just the slightly better back from Chicago now. Adams, hopefully he's not sick anymore. He's not going to have another dud like last week. And always have a lot from Diggs. And I think Kirk Cousins is a really solid quarterback start. He just got another weapon in Hawk. No problems there. Cordero Patterson is back off IR and is going to start. Do you put him in over Khalil Herbert? I don't think so. Atlanta's running game has been great, but I worry about them easing him back in too much if I'm Marty. So I leave everything right as is. Marty going with the Buccaneers defense against the Rams, and I like the Bucs, and I had them for a few weeks, but the team is struggling, so I didn't really have faith in them. See if they can have a good week this week. Stan on the other side is sitting Burrow in favor of Tua. Riding the hot hand could be a good idea. Burrow had quite a down week last week. Henry, who's just having another great season, age does not seem to affect him. Gibson been getting a lot of the passing work in Washington. Anybody big missing? Stan is missing Cortland Sutton, his second round draft pick, but that might just be for the best with how sad Sutton's season and most of Seattle has been all year. Chase Claypool traded. I don't see him making an impact his first week, but Chicago's awful. Fields is awful. But with how Claypool's doing, change can be good. And Stan has him at a deep keeper if he were to somehow go off there. Looking at these two teams, my instinct is Marty right now. See what Fantasy Pros, they have Marty at an 89 and Stan down at an 86. I kind of agree with that. I think Marty's roster looks a little stronger this week. I mean, the fear is that Derrick Henry puts up 45 points or something and Marty's unable to match it, but I don't like the odds of the Adams-Diggs combo disappointing again. I mean, see, Diggs is against the Jets. Their defense has been good, but I think Buffalo is, it doesn't matter who they're playing. Diggs is going to get his. Adams against Jacksonville, similar situation. I like Marty. I'm taking Marty here. All right, that's 5 of our games, and now we go to the game of the week. And with Max West, Banis, Bill, we had a few good choices. I'm really interested in this Swan against Minney. Minney is the little team that could, and you gotta love it. You gotta love the magic, but Swan is the Empire. Swan starting out 5-0, dropped a couple games and then got right back, bounced back last week against my pipe burst. Swan, that cook therapist. Yeah, 6-2 versus Minney's Kanye's Kitty Killers 2024, who are 3-5 and one game out of a playoff seat at this moment. 24 points from Goddard on Thursday. A good start for Swan. Already making it seem like more of a David and Goliath matchup than it already would have been. Bills against the Jets should be a decent matchup for them. Montgomery on the bench, CeeDee Lamb on a bye, but Swan's team is so deep now that Hopkins is back in there and doing everything you could have hoped that he would have. He looks like he's 27 again, so not missing a beat with CeeDee on the bench. It's a great roster, top to bottom. Kenneth Walker was the rookie hit you wanted that I was hoping James Cook would be. Just didn't happen. Over on Minney's side, Kyler Murray, statistically been doing well. The Cardinals aren't that great, but good fantasy quarterback. Alvin Kamara, though, has looked like Alvin Kamara. And that's where your upside comes in. He and Aaron Jones, who's still getting fed a lot. Tyler Boyd with Jamar Chase still out. And this is Minney swinging for the fence with that trade. And it could pay off this week. If Boyd gets one Boyd gets one deep catch, he gets those 50-yard touchdowns, and suddenly he's having a 20-some point game. That's where Minney can take this upset potentially. Since he traded Cooper, not missing anybody particularly damaging the bye week, Minney on Fantasy Pros sitting at a 90. And of course, Swan up at 100. Top team. It's definitely a seemingly impossible situation for Minney, but he scored 170 points last week. That's why this is my game of the week. Still, I pick Swan to win it, but don't doubt. Don't write it off. Minney could make this very interesting. If you have Minney beat Swan, Parker beat Mark, and Bill beat Brad, it doesn't really matter. Bill and Brad and Wes Max could go either way. Everything is really tight this year. I feel like we've been saying that a lot these past few years. Adding Bill to the league, having 12 very competitive guys, I think has just been great for the league. All right, that's going to do it for predictions this week. Let's go back over. I see we have some chats. I'll take any extra chats that we have, any questions that you guys have before I go rest my obnoxious, drunken Georgia fan voice for the rest of the day. Parker says that as soon as I picked Marty to win, Stan missed a putt. They must be out on the golf course. I envy them. Hope they're having a good game, good weather. Any other questions? Now's the time to send them in. And it looks like that's going to be it for us. Thank you guys, Parker and Grant, for watching live. Thank you for forgiving me not having my normal buttery baritone voice today. And remember, dance like no one's watching, love like you've never been hurt, sing like no one's listening, take those Thursday players out of your flex. Go Dogs.